Push it to the ketogenic diet. All the keto people be like, sugar is bad for ya. You should eat low carb instead. If you eat that potato, you're gonna get diabetes and fat.
And diabetes.
And all the carb people be like, fat will give you heart disease, cholesterol clogs your arteries, and meat gives you cancer. Which ones are right? None of them. There is no one size fits all to nutrition. Everyone has their own metabolism, their genetic preferences, their lifestyle factors and energy demands. You can't expect to go on a Michael Phelps diet with 12,000 calories and still expect to stay healthy if you're sitting in front of a computer all day. Likewise, if you're indeed an athlete, you want to eat in a way that supports your training and goals. Like I said, there are the keto people and there are the carb people. And they all promote their own agendas like these secret cults, which is actually quite an accurate way of describing it. Cult wars. The ketogenic diet is just one out of many out there. Maybe you've heard about it and you're interested in trying it out because there are still a lot of myths and misconceptions about it. Things like you get to eat unlimited amounts of food, you get to eat all that fat and meat, and you can still lose weight. First off the bat, I must say that the ketogenic diet isn't a fad diet. In fact, it should be thought of as the only non-fat diet out there because it changes your metabolism. Unlike other diets out there, like Atkins, Paleo, vegans, or the standard American diet. Paleo and veganism, they romanticize different ideas about nutrition, but physiologically they're still very similar. When you're in ketosis, the way your body metabolizes food and produces energy has been completely altered. If you don't know it already, then here's what happens. When you fast or restrict your carbohydrate intake close to zero, your liver starts producing ketones that give energy to muscles and the brain. After a while, the brain adapts to using ketones and fatty acids as its primary fuel source instead of glucose and carbs. On a high carb or just a restricted low carbohydrate diet, you still maintain a glucose burning metabolism. And that's how 90% of people's bodies function. Once you establish ketosis and become keto adapted, it's a completely different story. And that's why keto isn't a fad. It's based on real quantifiable science and physiology, more so than anything else. But who is the ketogenic diet for? Traditionally, the ketogenic diet was used to treat epilepsy in the 1920s. It's been proven to be very effective against
diabetes,
obesity, and heart disease. But over the last decade or so, it's been used by all types of people. Ironman triathletes, sedentary housewives, bodybuilders, gymnasts, ultramarathon runners, weightlifters, and just regular folks wanting to live a healthy lifestyle. So the ketogenic diet can work for many purposes and situations. After the villainization of fat in the 70s, there's been an epidemic of obese and diabetic individuals. There are now more overweight people than there are healthy ones, which is bizarre.
Actually, I'm surrounded by diabetes.
Obviously, the Western society has a huge problem, and there's no solution that's been found yet. New research is showing that it's not the fat or cholesterol per se that causes heart disease or becoming obese. It's not the carbs either. Although excess sugar will still most likely give you diabetes. Getting fat is a problem of hormonal and contextual mismatch. Eating the wrong things in the wrong amounts at the wrong time, under the wrong circumstances. And that's why Michael Phelps can eat that many calories while still staying lean. And that's why I think if you're overweight or have blood sugar problems, you should go on a low-carb ketogenic diet. Because restricting carbohydrates and insulin is one of the easiest and most important ways of improving your body composition and health. And the results are quite rapid. So based on that information, here are a few scenarios you should consider for going on a ketogenic diet. If you're overweight, then you should start a ketogenic diet. Even if you just want to shed a few extra pounds or finally lose those love handles, you should give it a go. If you're diabetic or have blood sugar problems, then you should do so as well. If you want to reduce oxidative stress and inflammation in your body, then you should consider at least going through a short period of keto adaptation. If you want to increase the density and efficiency of your mitochondria, then you should eat a low-carb ketogenic diet on a consistent basis. If you want to eat for optimal cognitive performance, then you should go keto, because the brain actually prefers ketones for fuel. If you want to increase your protection against cancer and malignant tumors, then you should combine keto with intermittent fasting. If you want to improve your body's ability to burn fat for fuel and in so doing increase your physical performance as well, then do keto. But you'd be better off by either incorporating the targeted or the cyclical ketogenic diet. I have books for both of them. If you want to feel less hungry and feel more energized during the day, then keto is the best diet there is. Because you'll have access to your own body fat stores constantly, 24/7. But don't get the false idea that, keto is the end-all be-all. You don't have to be in ketosis all the time or eat a ketogenic diet. But I would highly recommend you to go through the adaptation period at least once, to teach your body these pathways. When was the last time you fasted for longer than 20 hours? When was the last time your body actually tapped into its glycogen stores? When was the last time you burnt literally fat, not muscle? When was the last time you gave your metabolism a break from all these constant blood sugar rushes? So if you're interested in doing the ketogenic diet, then I have a free ebook called Simple Keto. But I've also created the Simple Keto video course that teaches you how to start a well-formulated ketogenic diet so that you can't mess it up. Check them out, but also click the like, subscribe for more videos about how to optimize your physiology and mindset. Thanks for watching. My name is Siim. Stay ketotic, stay empowered.
Have a good day.
An official International Society of Sports Nutrition position paper covering keto diets notes the ergolytic effects of keto diets on both high and low-intensity workouts. Ergolytic is the opposite of ergogenic. Ergogenic means performance boosting, whereas ergolytic means athletic performance impairing. For non-athletes, ketosis may also undermine exercise efforts. Ketosis was correlated with increased feelings of perceived effort and fatigue and mood disturbances during physical activity, suggesting that the ability and desire to maintain sustained exercise might be adversely impacted in individuals adhering to ketogenic diets for weight loss. I already mentioned the shrinkage of measured muscle size among CrossFit trainees, so a ketogenic diet may not just blunt the performance of endurance athletics, but strength training as well. Have people do 8 weeks of all the standard upper and lower body training protocols, bench press, pull-ups, squats, deadlifts, and no surprise, you boost muscle mass, unless you're on a keto diet, in which case there was no significant change in muscle mass after all that effort. Those randomized to the non-ketogenic diet added about 3 pounds of muscle, whereas the same amount of weightlifting on the keto diet tended to subtract muscle, an average loss of about 3.5 ounces of muscle. How else could you do 8 weeks of weights and not gain a single ounce of muscle, but on a ketogenic diet? Even keto diet advocates call bodybuilding on a ketogenic diet an oxymoron. What about bone loss? Sadly, bone fractures are one of the side effects that disproportionately plagues children placed on ketogenic diets, along with growth stunting and kidney stones. Ketogenic diets may cause a steady rate of bone loss, as measured in the spine, presumed to be because ketones are acidic, and so keto diets can put people in what's called a chronic acidotic state. Some of the case reports of children on keto diets are truly heart-wrenching. One 9-year-old girl seemed to get it all: osteoporosis, bone fractures, kidney stones, and then she got pancreatitis and died. Pancreatitis can be triggered by having too much fat in your blood. A single high-fat meal can cause a quintupling of the spike in triglycerides in your bloodstream within hours of consumption, which can put you at risk for inflammation of the pancreas. She had a rare genetic disorder called glucose transporter deficiency syndrome, where you're born with a defect in ferrying blood sugar into your brain. This can result in daily seizures starting in infancy, but a ketogenic diet can be used as a way to sneak fuel into their brains. So a ketogenic diet can be a godsend for the 1 in 90,000 families stricken with this disorder. As with anything in medicine, it's all about risks versus benefits. As many as 30% of patients with epilepsy don't respond to anti-seizure drugs, and the alternatives aren't pretty, including things like brain surgery. This can mean implanting deep electrodes through the skull, or even removing a lobe of your brain. This can obviously lead to serious side effects, but so can having seizures every day. So if a ketogenic diet helps with seizures, the pros can far outweigh the cons. For those just choosing a diet to lose weight, though, the cost-benefit analysis would really seem to go the other way. Thankfully, you don't need to mortgage your long-term health for short-term weight loss. We can get the best of both worlds by choosing a healthy diet. Remember that study that showed that the weight loss after being told to eat the low-carb Atkins diet for a year was almost identical to those told to eat the low-fat Ornish diet? The authors concluded this supports the practice of recommending any diet that a patient will adhere to in order to lose weight. That seems like terrible advice. There are regimens out there like the Last Chance diet, which evidently consisted of a liquid formula made from leftover byproducts from a slaughterhouse, that was linked to approximately 60 deaths. Well, it did promise to change people's lives. An ensuing failed lawsuit from one widower laid the precedent for the First Amendment protection for deadly diet books. It's possible to construct a healthy low-carb diet, or an unhealthy low-fat diet. A diet of cotton candy would be zero fat. But the health effects of a typical low-carb ketogenic diet like Atkins are vastly different from a low-fat plant-based diet like Ornish's. Not only would they have diametrically opposed effects on cardiovascular risk factors in theory, based on fiber and saturated fat and cholesterol contents of their representative meal plans, when actually put to the test, low-carb diets were found to impair artery function. Over time, blood flow to the heart muscle itself is improved on an Ornish-style diet, and diminished on a low-carb diet. Heart disease tends to progress on typical weight loss diets, actively worsen on low-carb diets, but may be reversed by an Ornish-style diet. Given that heart disease is the #1 killer of men and women, recommending any diet that a patient will adhere to in order to lose weight seems irresponsible. Why not tell people to smoke? Cigarettes can cause weight loss too, as can tuberculosis and a good meth habit, but the goal of weight loss is not to lighten the load for your pallbearers. Blood sugar, also known as blood glucose, is the universal go-to fuel for the cells throughout our bodies. Our brain burns through a quarter pound of sugar a day. It's preferred metabolic fuel. Our body can break down proteins and make glucose from scratch, but most comes from our diet in the form of sugars and starches. If we stop eating carbohydrates, or stop eating altogether, most of our cells switch over to burning fat. But fat has difficulty getting through the blood-brain barrier. But our brain has this constant massive need for fuel, one organ accounting for up to half of our energy needs. Without it, the lights go out permanently. To make that much sugar from scratch, our body would need to break down about a half pound of protein a day. That means we'd cannibalize ourselves to death within 2 weeks, but people can fast for months. The answer to the puzzle was discovered in 1967. Harvard researchers famously stuck catheters into the brains of obese subjects who had been fasting for over a month, and discovered that ketones had replaced glucose as the preferred fuel for the brain. Your liver can turn fat into ketones, which can then breach the blood-brain barrier and sustain your brain if you're not getting enough carbohydrates. Switching fuels has such an effect on brain activity that it has been used to treat epilepsy since antiquity. The prescription of fasting for the treatment of epileptic seizures dates back to Hippocrates. In the Bible, Jesus seems to have concurred. To this day, it's unclear why switching from blood sugar to ketones as a primary fuel source has such a dampening effect on brain overactivity. How long can you fast, though? To prolong the fasting therapy, in 1921, a distinguished physician-scientist at the Mayo Clinic suggested trying what he called a ketogenic diet, a high-fat diet designed to be so deficient in carbohydrates it could effectively mimic the fasting state. Remarkable improvement was noted the first time it was put to the test, efficacy that was later confirmed in randomized controlled trials. Ketogenic diets started to fall out of favor in 1938 with the discovery of the anti-seizure drug, which would become known as Dilantin, but ketogenic diets are still in use today as a third or fourth-line treatment for drug-refractory epilepsy in children. Oddly, the success of ketogenic diets against pediatric epilepsy seems to get conflated by keto diet proponents into suggesting a ketogenic diet is beneficial for everyone. But you know what else sometimes works for intractable epilepsy? Brain surgery. But I don't hear people at the gym clamoring to get their skulls sawed open. Right? Since when do medical therapies translate into healthy lifestyle choices? Scrambling brain activity with electroshock therapy can be helpful in some cases of major depression, so what, pass the electrodes? Ketogenic diets are also being tested to see if they can slow the growth of certain brain tumors. Even if it works, you know what else can help slow cancer growth? Chemotherapy. So why go keto when you can just go chemo? Promoters of ketogenic diets for cancer, paid for by so-called ketone technology companies, that will send you salted caramel bone broth powder for $100 a pound, or companies that market ketogenic meals, report extraordinary anecdotal responses in some cancer patients, but more concrete evidence is simply lacking. Even the theoretical underpinnings may be questionable. A common refrain is that cancer feeds on sugar. But all cells feed on sugar. Advocating ketogenic diets for cancer is like saying, Hitler breathed air, so let's boycott oxygen. Cancer can feed on ketones, too. Ketones have been found to fuel human breast cancer growth and drive metastases in an experimental model, more than doubling tumor growth. Some have even speculated that may be why breast cancer often metastasizes to the liver, the main site of ketone production. If you drip ketones on breast cancer cells in a petri dish directly, the genes that get turned on and off make for a much more aggressive cancer, associated with a significantly lower 5-year survival in breast cancer patients. Researchers are even considering designing ketone-blocking drugs to prevent further cancer growth by halting ketone production. And think about what eating a ketogenic diet might entail. High animal fat intake may increase the mortality risk among breast cancer survivors and potentially play a role in its development in the first place, through oxidative stress, hormone disruption, or inflammation. Men, too. A strong association has been found between saturated fat intake and prostate cancer progression. Those in the top third of consumption of these kinds of fat-rich animal foods appeared to triple their risk of dying from prostate cancer. Not necessarily fat in general, no difference in breast cancer death rates based on total fat intake, but saturated fat intake may negatively impact breast cancer survival, a 50% increased risk of dying from breast cancer. There's a reason the official American Cancer Society and American Society of Clinical Oncology breast cancer survivorship care guidelines recommend a dietary pattern for breast cancer patients that's essentially the opposite of a ketogenic diet. High in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes, meaning beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, and low in saturated fats. So far, not a single clinical study has shown a measurable benefit from a ketogenic diet for any human cancer. There are currently at least a dozen trials underway, however, and the hope is that at least some cancer types will respond. Still, even then, that wouldn't serve as a basis for recommending ketogenic diets for the general population, any more than recommending everyone go out and get radiation surgery and chemo for kicks.